How's it going, guys? I'm Josh and welcome to my first ever real New York apartment. I have finally moved out of the dorms. I'm slowly becoming an adult and I'm living in Brooklyn, so it's only a matter of time before I become an obnoxious yuppie Brooklynite. So let's seize the day. That's a half joke. Today I'm going to do my third reviewing your photos video where you guys can submit your photos and I review them, talking about what I love, what I hate, and everything in between. But before we get going, I want to say a couple of things. First of all, if you're new to my videos, you might be thinking, who is this guy and what gives him the right? Which is actually a great question, because you can't take photo advice from someone whose photos you either don't think are good or whose style you maybe don't agree with, because I might think a photo is great that someone else might hate, or vice versa. So if you want to see my work, you can check out my Instagram and my photos on my website. Links to all that stuff down below. Second, if you want to submit your photos for my next review, you can email them to joshkatzphotos@gmail.com. I'll only review your photos if you include all of this information right here, and I'll put this in the description down below. And third thing, I have an idea which I'm super excited about. I get so many emails from you guys with photos you want reviewed, and I will never be able to get to them. There are thousands sitting in my inbox right now. So to try and do more of these, and just to make this a little more engaging and fun, I want to try doing live streaming where I review your photos on the spot. I'm still sort of kicking around the idea and figuring out the logistics, and I'm not entirely sure if I want to do this. So if that's something that excites you, please leave a comment down below and give this video a thumbs up, just so I can know if there is some good enthusiasm behind this. And if so, I'm going to try and get it going in the next week or two. So definitely let me know if you have any ideas and what you think. Anyway, let's get this review going, because I just rambled for so long. First off, we've got a photo from Andrew, which I'm super excited about because there's a great story behind this. They were going surfing in Puerto Rico, the waves were small, so they ventured off course, and this is like a secret surf spot. First off, I immediately noticed this nice use of horizontal rule of thirds, where you've got 1/3 sky, 1/3 water, and then 1/3 beach, and I think that's really awesome. It separates the photo really nicely. Now, something I don't like is that this photo is a little bit crooked. Now, this is a super easy fix. Oftentimes when you're shooting photos, they're not going to always be perfectly aligned with that flush horizon. So what you should do is you should take this photo into Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever editing software you use, and I would align the horizon line between the water and the sky and make sure that is perfectly level, and that'll make this photo seem much stronger. And then the one other thought I have on this is the framing is very cool, with the surfer kind of in this nice box between the stick and the water, and that's great. Now, what I'm not that crazy about is you gotta think about what the subject of the photo is. Now, the surfer isn't in focus, so they are in the backdrop. The subject is kind of this stick. Now, that's totally fine if it's a super cool stick, but I'm looking at this, I'm like, why do they photograph this stick? Like, I think that this exact technique and all this framing would be awesome with something else a little more significant. So for example, some other subjects you might want to focus on in the foreground, it'd be cool to see like a beach towel with someone laying on it, an umbrella, anything like that that's a little bit more relevant, I think would make this photo much stronger. But there are clearly good understandings of composition going down here. There's promise in your photography, Andrew. So thank you for submitting, and let's move on to the next shot. This next photo is submitted by Luca Rodriguez, and I just want to go on the record and say this video is not sponsored by McDonald's. I did not know this photo was going to pop up, and I do want to talk a little bit about branding and product placement in photography. So product photography is its own realm in photography, and it can even be a great way to make money shooting photos. Now, sometimes seeing products in an image that isn't supposed to be for a brand can sometimes be a little bit off-putting. For example, say I wanted to take a nice photo of my kitchen. I would rather use a nice glass that has no branding on it than a big old Arby's cup, because the Arby's cup can be kind of distracting. So if you're gonna shoot something, try your best to avoid product placement unless you're getting paid. We've got another photo from Lucas that I want to talk about. So we shot this in an abandoned grain terminal in Red Hook, Brooklyn, which is super cool. Now, some easy compositional elements you can employ to make this a much stronger shot. So first of all, the subject is clearly the guy standing in the terminal, as well as the New York skyline. So what I would do to put some more emphasis on that is first, all of the stuff leading up to the New York skyline. You see that football field in the front and you're like, okay, that's kind of distracting and just not the same as New York City. So what I would do is I would get much lower. It looks like he's standing about level height and taking the photo. I would lie in the ground. Taking stomach photos can be really great sometimes, because now all you see is the floor of the grain terminal followed by immediately New York City, and not just a bunch of Brooklyn. That's not as interesting. Real quick, I want to just clarify this perspective change. So right now, I'm going to look outside my apartment and shoot a photo, and I'm standing at this height with my camera at eye level right now. Notice how much of the building you see right now and how little of the sky. Now, suddenly, I'm like, okay, let's get on our bellies, lie down. Okay, And now that I'm on my stomach, if I look out, notice how little of the building you see and how much of the sky there is. So when you want to eliminate a distracting element in the photo, lying down or getting higher can totally change the perspective and remove or add a lot to the photo. So keep that in mind. Another thing is you have this nice built-in frame of the grain terminal, and I would position your subject in between one of those squares to put a little more emphasis on him, and it's like he's framed up in the image, which is always super cool and a little more powerful than having him being intersected by a line. That's kind of distracting. Our next shot was submitted by Garrett Grubach of Santa Cruz, California, and this is a nice little sunset photo. Now I have a couple thoughts on sunset photos. So first, I get nothing submitted to me more than sunset photos. So many of them. And I understand the sunset is beautiful and super easy to shoot because it's in your backyard. Now, sunset photos can get very boring if you're not careful, and oftentimes they are just not fun to look at. So what I like that Garrett did is he used a really close focusing range so that you can see the texture of the ground right around him, and then the background, everything's super out of focus because he used a very low aperture number. Let me see what he said. f3.5. So yeah, that's kind of a cool thing. It's nice just not to take those very typical focusing on the ocean sunset shots. Now, another great way to step up your sunset shots without just shooting with a close focal range is shooting something in the foreground. So it could be a portrait with the sunset in the background, it could be a skate trick, it could be anything you like to shoot, just shooting during that time of day. With flashes, you can take pretty cool portraits with the sunset in the background, and you can also, if you don't have any flashes, just take really cool silhouette images. So I highly recommend trying these to step up your sunset shots. Our next photo is really fascinating, and it's from Bilal, shot in a town in Morocco whose name I'm not going to try pronouncing. This shot makes me want to talk a little bit about composition. This sort of reminds me of the typical vacation shot. No offense, but it's sort of like when you just snap a photo of the scene. You want to capture it, but you're maybe not entirely focused on anything in particular. So when I look at this shot, I'm like, all right, what is the subject here? The trick to having better composition is thinking about a particular element and really focusing on capturing that. So for example, I might see, okay, this doorway on the right looks really fascinating, and then I really like this man who's watering his plants, and the plants are also beautiful. So I would try and frame a shot and have only those things in the shot. So there's a very clear focus. Is it the landscape? Is it the architecture? Is it the people interacting with the architecture? Anyway, Bilal, I hope you appreciate the intense criticism, and thank you so much for submitting these shots. Remember that sometimes half the battle is just getting to the location, so props on going to Morocco. That is super cool. Or maybe you're from Morocco and that's not as cool. Next photo we've got from Riku Noraki, and he shot this of the Northern Lights in Finland, and that's just absolutely incredible. Now, there's really not much I have to say as far as improvements go, because this is just a beautiful photo. If you guys are curious about how to shoot the stars, I actually just made an astrophotography tutorial for beginners, so if you want to check that out, link to it right over here. This next shot is from Matt Brewer, and he shot this in some ambiguous park. So when I look at this photo, no offense, Matt, but I see this and I'm like, he looks like he just snapped this and put his phone back in his pocket immediately. Nothing super exciting. So how do you make this landscape shot a little more exciting? Because he has this very beautiful sunset and nice looking park with great reflections. So one tip I have for making reflection photos much more compelling is using a tripod and a very slow shutter speed, which will allow you to actually smooth out the water, because this looks like it was snapped on an iPhone, and he probably shot it at maybe 1/120th of a second, or whatever default shutter speed the iPhone automatically uses. Now, if you were to use a shutter speed like 5 seconds, the water would actually smooth out, and you'd have this very perfect reflection where you could even flip the photo and it'd be hard to tell that it's upside down, because that's how good of a reflection it is. Here's a photo I've taken at Grand Teton National Park with that technique. Now, another thing is if you have too much light, if it's super bright outside, a neutral density filter is also the move for using long exposures during the day. And if you want to learn more about that, I have a whole tutorial on ND filters, so link to that over here. How convenient. Next off, we've got a photo from Jake Debbage, and it's a selfie he shot in Queensland, Australia. Now, the edit's actually really interesting. It looks like he shot his camera on a tripod, 2 different photos, and then photoshopped in the background from one photo so that he could have the empty face. And I think that's really interesting, and also you can see he removed the birds, which is fine. Now, this technique is really interesting, and I actually have never experimented it, but I want to show you a shot from my friend Issa, who did something really cool like that. And here's this photo he shot in some sort of park in Virginia. It's really just basic layering in Photoshop, but it's a super cool effect. I think you can do some really creative stuff. I think I'm gonna go and try that this week and see what I can come up with on my Instagram. Anyway, next photo. For this next shot, we got submitted by Minesh Patel in Oxford, UK. He has a photo of a skateboarder doing what looks to be like a kickflip. And instead of talking about this specific shot, we're going to talk about photo ethics in general on this. So what I noticed, being a skateboarder, I see this, I'm like 90% sure it's a kickflip. And the skateboarder is far too ahead of his board. It looks like he's not gonna land the trick. Now there are two basic rules of skate photography. One is you can only post photos of a trick if it's been landed. It doesn't have to be the actual attempt that he landed, but the trick has to have been landed at some point for you to honestly post a photo. Unless you run it and say, hey, he didn't land it. That's okay. That's the one exception. And two is the attempt doesn't have to be the one he landed. However, it should be one that came pretty close. So it should look like he landed it. So you should run a photo where he actually caught the skateboard. And even if he kicked out at the last second, it should look like he's about to land it. If you don't skate and you want to try taking skateboarding photos, ask a skateboarder which one looks best before you run and edit it, because it'll just make sure you have a way better shot. I should also add, there are codes of ethics for photojournalism to ensure that people tell stories with integrity. Now, skateboarding photography sort of falls into that category, and that's one of those things. You can't lie, and running a skateboarding trick that wasn't landed without admitting it wasn't landed would be considered a lie. And if you're curious to read more about ethics in photojournalism, I'll put a link down below in the description. Here's something interesting. Jad Moosley actually made this in one of his Photoshop classes, and he photoshopped a bunch of kids into a street photo I took. By the way, guys, if you ever want to use my photos for art projects in school or whatever, I get a lot of requests for this. Reach out to me in an email, and I'd rather send you a high quality version of one of my photos than you screenshot it and have it look super low res. So just let me know. I'd be happy to share some stuff with you guys. I'm going through all these shots you guys have submitted, trying to find another photo to review, and the locations on these shots are incredible. It's so cool having a global audience. I've seen shots from Brussels, from Iceland. People live in Iceland, Germany, from India, from all over. You guys are killing it in the travel and living game. You live in New York. We're gonna end it with this last photo from Alex Olbin, shot in Toronto. It's got a cool story about breaking in to get this photo past security, whatever. Let's not get this kid arrested. However, what I wanna talk about is two things. So first of all, the lens that he used. It looks like he's using a kit lens, yeah, so 18 to 55. And that's okay. What I would recommend for great city rooftop photography is a wide angle lens. And I use the Tamron 10 to 24 millimeter f3.5 lens. And the reason why I like the wide angle is because if you look at this photo, you can only see so much of the street and so much of the top of the buildings. And some of them are even cut off, which is, you know, you're missing out on a lot of really cool information, it seems like. So with the wide angle, you can capture more of the street, longer light trails, the tops of the city, skyline, and all that great stuff. So I'd highly recommend that. And if you want to be inspired by great rooftop photography, you got to follow my friend flashing.lights on Instagram. His name's Josh Sharrow. I skate with him all the time, and he takes incredible rooftop photos. Definitely follow him, and I'll put a link down below. And that is that. I think we've reviewed enough photos for today. So a couple things. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and give it a thumbs up, because that really helps me. And if you have any thoughts on what you liked, what you didn't like, leave a comment down below, because I'm always trying to improve these. And if you want to see me doing some live streaming photo reviews, let me know in the comments down below, because I'm still sort of on the fence about it. And any encouragement would be awesome. So definitely let me know about all those things. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you eventually. I'm gonna go make lunch now.